Hey everybody, it's Tuesday again, and that means it's time for Tuesdays in the Shop with Gotham Quilts. I'm Yvette,
I'm Andrea.
and it is the end of January somehow. Like,
We have one more. We have one more Tuesday in
yeah,
January.
one more Tuesday, but it's already the 23rd. It's this weekend is our virtual retreat, which we booked for like the last weekend in February, and it's like,
January.
sorry, January.
See, you're already skipping ahead.
I know, because I'm so like, how can it be the end of January? Oh, so I asked people to check in on chat where they're watching from. So we got somebody from Arizona, somebody from Maryland, somebody from Missouri so far.
Wow.
Thank you for coming. It's so much fun to see where people are. Andrea and I, of course, are in New York City in our own apartments. Well, Andrea's in the space, but yeah. What are we talking about today, Andrea?
We're talking about a really cool new fabric that I'm really excited about. It's a fabric from Art Gallery. They're calling the collection 2.5 edition, which is a little bit of a weird name, but there is a reason. Um, it's basically a bunch of prints that have 2.5 inch wide strips made specifically for binding. So these are printed so that you can have really cool, like custom binding on, or make it look like it's custom binding. So we have 8 different prints. And I don't have the names memorized yet. The bolts over there. But this stripe one, I love a good stripe.
That one's
Um,
called Threadwork Bound in Blossom.
Thank you. So threadwork bound in blossom.
Blossom, yeah.
Yeah. So this is a pinky corally version.
Yeah.
Um,
Andrea, do you
there's
want me to play the video that I recorded
Yeah,
for
let's do
both
that.
of them? Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because we're trying to make, increase our professionalism a little bit. I'm going to start pre-recording some stuff instead of us holding it up, trying to and having
It does
technical
look better that way.
right? So I recorded a video going through all of these different prints and then also showing you how to cut it up and make your binding. And then Andrea has also stitched it onto a couple of projects. So we're going to show you. Okay. All right. And there's no audio in this video, so you and I will just narrate. Okay.
Yes, we can narrate. So this, you'll have to say, or maybe I'll just go get them.
What did that one's called? That one's called Horticulture Bound. I don't know what that means. Oh, I think maybe I'm going too fast. Hold on. Let me go backwards. So that first one with the cars, which is a really cute one for a retro project or something for little kids. There's little spaceships like UFOs, and then there's these vintage looking cars on it. This one is called Forticule Bound in Spring.
Wait, which one?
The one that's on the screen now, the cars.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what forticle means.
No, it's UFO bound.
What?
That's what the bolt says.
That's not what you put on the product. So Andrea sets up the products.
Apparently, I didn't do very well on that one.
Yeah, you know what? Two of them are called Horticulture Bound in Spring.
So
I'll
the floriculture is the flower one, which
Yeah.
would make sense. Floriculture. Yeah, I guess I got some
I think
copy
it got
paste or
copy
something.
pasted. Yeah, exactly. So I
But
can
yeah, the one with the cars and the UFOs is called UFO bound.
UFO Bound. That makes a lot more sense for the name.
Yes, which I will fix that as soon as we're done.
Yep. And then what do we have next? We have this really pretty stripy one.
Dotted slant bound.
And I don't know if you all can parse that. Basically, each one of these like yellowish stripes is where you're going to cut apart to get a 2.5 inch strip. So you can see that like half of it is striped and the other half of the strip is this polka dot, which means you have two choices for your binding.
Mm-hmm. And they print a little scissor on the cut line, so you know that that's what it is.
You can see it better in this one, I think.
Yeah, a little bit more contrast there. This is one of my favorites, this blue one. This one is stitched and bound.
Stitch and bound. Yeah,
So
I really like the X's.
It looks like stitches.
Yeah, I really like that.
Like a little sashiko, a little,
Yeah.
cross stitch.
Why is it not playing?
That I can't answer.
Okay, so then
That's
the
floriculture.
floral one.
Yes, that's floriculture.
This looks a little yellow on my screen.
It has a cream cast to it. It's not that yellow in real life, or at
Yeah, I
least
feel like in real life it's more peachy.
it does have. It's a little bit peachy, yeah.
Yeah.
Cream peach, not so yellow.
Ooh, and then the black and white one.
So this very geometric, high contrast would look really cool, I think, as binding.
And it just is called geometry bound.
Yes.
And then this is my favorite, of course, the purple one.
The purple, really? It's not the pink?
No, it's a purple
I would
one.
have guessed the pink would have been your favorite.
So this one's called Threadwork Bound in Crystal. I really love this one.
Crystal, purple is crystal. The yellow is sprout, and which is coming up right here.
This looks a little wacky on camera. It's not quite this crazy looking.
It does have a little bit of green in it as well. And then this is blossom.
And I just flipped back through them because I had so much fun looking at these. I'm just going to stop this and reopen it so that I can actually play it like a normal video instead of scrolling the way I was.
But there's a little bit of everything. You've got the cars, you've got flowers, you've got your basic geometric, you've got high contrast stripes,
something for kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, so this is
stuff, some more sophisticated stuff.
Yeah, I really like the blue one. So that was just flipping through them all. And then I'm showing in this video, normally when we cut fabric, we cut the two layers together, right? The fabric is folded in half and we just slice with our rotary cutters and their rulers. In the case of anything with a stripe like this, where it's like, it actually matters where you're cutting, you do not want to cut through both layers. You're going to cut through one layer at a time so that you can be sure you're cutting on the correct line and not accidentally going beyond the line and ruining that strip of fabric. Because, when you're doing binding, you want lots of strips that you can sew together, not teeny little strips that mean a bunch of different seams, right? So you can see that I'm using a rotary cutter, although you could just use scissors to do this. I think Andrea used scissors.
I did. I just used scissors.
Yeah. And by the way, quick aside, I am using my magnetic cutting system. If you all have been with us for however long, in the fall, we were doing pre-orders for this new Sew Tight magnetic cutting system. And I have to say, it made such a difference for my poor, weak hands. It's wonderful. If you haven't gotten it yet, get it. We're not selling it anymore. We did pre-orders once and they came and we shipped them, but it's worth the money. It's pricey, but if you struggle with accurate cutting, it is definitely worth it.
And you can get them directly from Sew Tight, right?
Yes, from their website.
Yeah. So if someone is interested in getting one, you can just go to Sew Tight.
Yep.
TITE.
Yeah. So you could see here that I had finished cutting the end off to make it straight, and then I'm just cutting the other half, the other cut to get the 2.5 inch strip off. So each 2.5 inch strip that you're going to cut is the width of the fabric. So like 40 inches, right? That does have selvage that you're going to cut off before you join them.
Yes. Just like any other fabric.
So you can see that I'm going down the width of the fabric.
Right. And just one layer at a time.
Well, Linda's saying that the cutting system is really helping her with her rheumatoid.
I bet. So that's the strip of binding. That's the before it's been pressed. And then here it is after it's been pressed.
So here, yep. Oh, maybe I should have transitioned that better. That's the strip. And you can see that one side has the cars and the other side has the UFOs. And then I went to my iron and I pressed it in half, which is what we all do for double fold binding. And here is just half of the strip. So you can see what each half looks like. So you can pick which side you want.
Right.
Sewn when you stitch it onto your quilt.
Yeah, which is really cool. So you would see, in this case, you'd see the cars on one side and you would see those diamonds on the other side of your quilt. So you get options, you basically have 4 options for what you want to show on the front. But there
Oh,
are, well, you
oh,
could,
I
because
guess you
you can
do.
switch it, yeah.
Right.
But
Okay.
you're still
So
only getting 2 sets of designs.
right. So basically, you fold it in half, and then one side has, design A, one side has design B, but each half of design A, design B has different designs on it. So
Right.
if you stick a stitch to the front of your quilt first versus stitch to the back of your quilt first, you can decide where the thing goes.
Or
Andrew,
just
you want to show the one
flip
that
the
you,
strip over. Yes, we
yeah.
do have an example to illustrate this because it is a little hard
It's
to,
very hard to picture in your head, but when you
right,
see the
until you
strip,
do it.
it's much easier.
So for the blue one, so however, um, hopefully that's at least somewhat in focus.
Yep.
So this has 2 different designs here. There's like a cross kind of design here. And then on the bottom, it's really sashiko looking. So those are, so if I use this on the outside, one of these would be on the front and one would be on the back. And then the other option is the X's, and then these, I don't know, just stitches,
Yeah, like that.
rows of stitching. So if you put this one on the outside, you'd see one on the front and one on the back, which I did. So I just bound this little random block that I found laying on the floor in my sewing room. And I wanted to show you both ways. So on this side, I have the X on the face. And then on this side, I have the
Dashes.
dashes. That's a good word. Thank you. On the face. But then on the other side, I have those little pluses and then the sashiko strip or stitching on this side. And hopefully you can see that.
You could totally see it. And like most of us care more about what the binding looks like on the front of our quilts. So you're going to pick the one you want to be on the front, and then the back doesn't have to be boring. It has some other little touch on it, which is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, and this one, my spacing is just a tiny bit off. I was not doing a very good 1/4 inch. It was over a 1/4 inch, so there's a little bit more negative space along the fold than there probably should have been. But if I had done an actual 1/4 inch, it would have been like perfect. It would have been right on.
It's good enough, Andrea. You do not have to point out the like tiny eighth of an inch
I mean,
difference.
it still looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I love these dashes. Like that one, that came out right on.
I love the X's. They look so
Yeah, exactly. Those 2. And the fact that those are on opposite sides of each other, so you can have both
yeah.
at the same time and look really good.
It looks
The other one I did was
and
the UFO because I love UFOs. They're so, and these ones are so cute. So this is a little, let's see if I can get it in the light. So here's some little UFOs on one of our New York fabrics. And then on the other side are the little multicolored dashes. So this is one of the ones that has, that's different on both sides. So I chose the UFOs, but it's also got the cars on the other side. So for this sample, the cars are on the inside, so you can't see them. So you just get the UFOs and the dashes.
I like the dashes a lot too.
I know, and it even looks good with this color too.
Yep.
So yeah, totally different looks. They obviously still coordinate, but it's just so fun that you can do that and have something different on both sides without having to do a bunch of like engineering and seaming and measuring. That's too much. Like this is easy. You just cut on the line, fold it like you would any other binding, sew it together like you would any other binding, sew it on your quilt pretty much like any other binding. You just need to think a little bit ahead about, which way you want to sew it and whether, you start with this end or you start with this end.
Ooh, show that one.
Okay, so this is the purple one. The what was this? Thread work? Yeah, thread work. So on one side I have sort of wide stripes, and on the other side I have skinny stripes.
I really like that one too.
Yeah, I love these. And honestly, I really like the pink. I I'm really drawn to it for some reason.
I see that as very orange, not pink.
Well, it's kind of a coral, I guess. I mean, it's both. It's orange and it's pink. And maybe because I really like orange. But look how good it goes with this. Oh man, we should
Oh
have.
yeah, that's perfect with that quilt behind you.
Oh yeah, that would be
Hi
perfect.
Karen, thanks for joining us.
Well, you couldn't see that, but see there, that would look so good.
Yeah, that's like
Actually,
almost too
purple.
perfect of a match.
The purple would look pretty good too.
You're right.
So those are just. Let me show you a couple others here. This is the flower, Florida culture or something. So it's not actually a flower on this side. Well, there's dots, so it's a row of dots, and then there is a row of blue and yellow flowers there.
I'm going to put the QR code up on the screen. So if you want to scan the QR code, you can then go to our website to see all the different prints. Which one were you showing again?
The Floriculture.
Oh, by the way, I fixed the name of the UFO.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So the UFO one now says UFO on the website.
So this one's really soft and pretty. And this one, actually, I think you would get the flowers on both sides. Because if I fold this, your flowers are kind of over the fold. So you get flowers on the edge and then that row of, I don't know, little dizzy stars or something.
I'm going to make the QR code a little smaller so that you can be bigger. There we go.
Oh, there you go. So I think that's about, I mean, this isn't exact, but
yeah,
just trying to give you an idea of what it would look like here.
I think that one is the most vintage looking of all the options.
Yes, I think so.
Sweet to make like a baby quilt or like something for your great aunt.
Yeah. So, and then these other ones are definitely a little bit more modern. So here we've got our stripe. So that would be, so this one would be striped on both sides, right. Diagonal stripe. If you do it that way, or you can do the dots. So that would also be dots on both sides. And they leave enough of a little edge there so that even when you sew your quarter inch, when you're sewing it on to the quilt, it's enough of a blank space there so that you're not cutting into the design.
Right.
Which is really nice. Like they thought about this. And then this black and white one. So this one you'd get triangles. Or
that one's cooler seeing it as binding than as a print. When I was looking at it as a print, I was kind of bored. But as a binding, it's so cool.
It is hard to imagine when you're just seeing a big piece of it. But yeah, once you cut it up, it's like, oh yeah, I can see that as a binding.
I think that's a really usable one.
I think so too. I think a lot of these are really usable. Yeah, and I can't decide which one is my favorite. I thought it was the blue, but then it's the stripe, and then it's the UFO, and then it's the geometric.
Mine is the purple one.
So we have, so we're selling these as yardage. And we have a bundle, a half yard bundle of all 8, so that you can just have them on hand. And a half yard is enough generally to do up to a throw size. Of course, it depends. Oh, headbands. Those would be good.
Oh, that's a great idea.
That is a great idea. You could totally do that. Anyway, yeah, so we have a half yard bundle. And half yards are usually enough to do most throw size. And that way you'll have a half yard of each one and you're ready to go. Does the design run lengthwise or widthwise? So it's from selvage to selvage, just the way you would cut binding in most cases.
You want me to put the video screenshot back up? So
I can hold it up here too.
Oh yeah, good idea. I forgot you had
the selvage is on this side, so you're cutting across.
Yep.
So yeah, for a half yard would give you. Well, I guess I could find out.
That's another.
Or do the math. How do you divide 18 by 2.5?
What are you trying to figure out?
How many strips you would get in a half yard?
Oh,
at least probably 7. Mine's more than a half yard, but something like that.
Yes, it's a little more than 7 inches, right? Or 7 repeats. Yeah.
Yeah, so about 7. And of course, we can't cut right on the line, so you'll probably end up getting partial strips on either side.
Yep.
There's really not much we can do about that.
And
And
that's
as you could
why I
see,
showed this when I was showing how I was cutting it from the edge.
exactly.
You're going to get it like this with a partial bit at the end that you just trim off, and then you have your first full 2.5 inch strip.
Right, right. But you're never wasting more than 2.5 inches.
You're never even wasting 2.5. I don't think.
Right. It's
Yeah,
it'll
like
always be
half an
less.
inch or yeah.
But unfortunately, so you can see here the way this is printed, this is still folded just like it came off the bolt. But one side, it's not exactly even.
Right.
So when I cut this on the cutting line, it doesn't line up evenly. So when we're cutting to fill orders, we can't use scissors. We have to just we pile up a bunch of fabrics at once and cut them all at once with the rotary cutter. So we don't have the time to be lining everything up every time. So this is, it just happens with a lot of fabric, unfortunately, going through all the machines that they go through. I mean, I'm sure when they printed this, it was perfectly straight. But once it gets printed, it gets rinsed, and then it gets a finishing agent on it, and then it goes through a dryer,
and then it gets wound in the folded way.
Exactly. And then, it goes through quality control, and then it gets wound and put on bolts. And so it can shift, and unfortunately, it often does. So that's why you can't always expect it to be perfectly straight, and you can't cut it with just a rotary cutter as if it were regular, solid fabric or something like that. You really have to pay attention.
But they gave us the lines to cut on, so it makes it really easy.
Right, exactly.
Just make sure you only cut one layer at a time right on the line, and you're good to go.
Yep, exactly. And printing that little scissor on it is perfect because, one, it tells you that it's a cutting line, and two, it reminds you should probably be using scissors instead of a rotary cutter.
Yeah.
But if you do it the way Yvette did, a rotary cutter is perfectly fine.
Yeah, you just have to go slow. Don't try to, slice through it too fast.
Yeah. But yeah, we think these are really cool. And we've seen, so Deb Fisher did prints that were specifically for binding in her first collection, So Good. It came out 2 years ago, maybe. But it didn't have like cutting lines. Like it was a striped fabric, and her intention was to use it for binding, but you could also use it for whatever you wanted. Do you join the strips on the diagonal as usual? Yes. So I did that. Mine looks funky because I flipped the fabric over when I joined them. Actually, this is the sewn one, so that you could see the different sides. But you can see on the edge that where you can't tell because they do put that blank on both sides of the design. So when you go to sew it together on the diagonal, just like you would any other binding, that blank space lines up.
So Andrea, why do we teach people to sew binding on the diagonal?
That's an excellent question. And you might be a little confused. A lot of people think that binding has to be cut on the bias, which it absolutely does not, as you can see here, because none of these are cut on the bias.
And you can't cut these on the bias. You'll end up
exactly.
Yeah.
You would ruin them if you cut them on the bias. But the only time you ever need your fabric cut on the bias is if you're going around a curve. So if you do have curved corners, these are not the fabrics you want to use for the binding. But the reason we sew it on the diagonal when we're sewing our strips together is because when we fold all of these layers, let me find a shorter one here. Here we go. So we have it's already folded twice right now. And so if I had a straight seam here, I'd fold it once. So a straight seam, if you press open, so that once I fold it in half, that's 4 layers of fabric at the seam. And then I fold it
again.
Right. And then I fold it again. Now it's 8 layers of fabric on the seam. And then you even have to fold it again to get it onto the back of your quilt. So that's, I don't know, 12 something, a ridiculous amount of fabric, all right on top of each other. Whereas if you sew it on the diagonal, let me just draw a line here. So actually, I'll do it this one because that'll be even easier to see. My pen works.
Also,
Okay.
do not mark your sewing with pens normally.
Yeah, don't usually do that. This is my scrap from when I already found my thing. So if this were my seam, when I fold that, you can see that it just makes a V. So on this side, it's going towards my right hand, and then on the other side, it's going towards my left hand. So that's my first fold. And then I fold again, and now it's going, so it's a W basically. And you can fold it as many times as you want, and the seam is always going to be in a different place. So you don't have that bulk of all of your seams right on top of each other. I have done quilts with straight joins. There was one in particular where I had the background fabric was different on the top and the bottom. And so I used the bottom fabric for the binding on the top and the top fabric for the binding on the bottom and had them join right there where the background changed. If you have a reason to do it, you can. It's just, it makes your life so much harder. So yeah. I wouldn't do it unless I had a really good reason to do it. It just makes your life so much easier.
Yeah. It's so much more pleasant sewing through all those layers if you don't have, stitch is fine, and then a giant lump.
Exactly. Yeah. That lump can be very difficult to get through.
So this sort of spreads out the lump to
exactly.
A wider space. So when you're going from no join to join, it's not as big a hump for your
right. You barely notice it.
Yep. It's one of those things that when I first started quilting that I was like, this isn't necessary. And then, yes, it is. It's
if you've ever tried to do it without, it's it's fairly necessary.
It's not even that much harder,
Yeah.
Not harder at all. You just have to think about it a little bit, maybe.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to put our cells back side to side again. We have some ideas for how to use this funny binding thing, and we're going to play with it. And if you all come up with any other ideas that aren't just binding a square thing, we would love to see them.
Yeah, I bet you guys will come up with some good things. Like Hank already came up with headband.
Yes, I would not have thought about headband.
I don't think I would have either.
Even like a scrunchie, it would work, right? Because it's like two-sided. So like a scrunchie would look, not that I wear scrunchies, but like children do, I guess. So we're going to be playing around and seeing, because this is it's not any different than any other fabric, but because it's designed in those 2.5-inch repeats, it could be cool to maybe cut it up and piece it so that it's like radiating out or something, right? So
yeah,
something I'm going to play with a little bit.
I think I want to too. And just, it's like so many options. Which one do I choose?
Yep.
And so much more interesting. And the fact that a lot of them are striped, I love a striped binding.
You do love a stripe. You cannot resist this.
I mean, I already love stripes in general, but binding, love a stripe binding.
Yeah, me too. The Tula Tiny Dots, I think, are my favorite binding fabric right now.
The Tiny Dots?
We have this new fancy. Oh, did I say Tiny Dots? I meant Tiny Stripes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now that we have this new fancy binding fabric, this is what we should use.
Yeah.
Oh, we're planning to bind something for QuiltCon in it, right? Because we're bringing this fabric to QuiltCon. We're vending.
We are going to bring it to QuiltCon. I don't know what we would bind in it. We hadn't discussed that yet.
Yeah. So we probably should figure that out.
Yeah, we'll talk about that off camera.
Yeah. So for any of you who are going to QuiltCon this year, it's in North Carolina, the weekend of February 24th. And we're going to be there, and you should come say hi to us, because we don't get to see people in person anymore. And sometimes we get a little rabid.
I miss you guys.
Yep. So it'll be like a reunion for the New York City store, but in North Carolina. Okay, so if anyone has any questions about this fabric, let us know in the comments, or you can always send us an email. I put the QR code back up so you can scan it to see all the options. And again, we're selling it as yardage or is a
Eight
not
piece,
one
half
half
yard bundle.
yard bundle. That way you get every print in it.
Right. And we're not doing fat quarters or full yard bundles because what's the point of a fat quarter? And we figured if you're buying full yards, you can pick and choose which ones you want anyway. So just the half yard bundle this time.
Yeah, it's a nice size to have in your stash because most of us don't make gigantic quilts all the time. We make
I don't.
baby quilts the most or throw size quilts the most, right? So this is like having a stash of binding fabric.
Exactly. Yep.
I could even see somebody getting the bundle and then just preparing all that binding up front. If you've seen online, some people will make binding ahead of time to have ready for when they get to that point in a quilt, because you get to the end of a quilt and you just want to finish it.
Yeah.
So then when you have to stop and make the binding and press it, and it always gets all tangled, and
Yep.
so like I so many times I get to that step and then I put it away because I'm too annoyed at having to make the binding. So some people online, you'll see they'll show, 3 or 4 projects worth of binding with the binding all wind up and like waiting for the project to be done.
That's
So
a good idea.
you could get this bundle with the 8 different bindings, process them all, and put them away. And then
Yeah.
when you
Ready
get
to
to
go.
the next finished quilt, you just pull one out and you can stick that binding right on there.
Mm-hmm. Linda is asking, what yardage do I need to make a lap quilt or a twin size? Without knowing the exact dimensions, it's hard to say, but a half yard to 5/8 is usually a throw size. If you're not sure, just go ahead and get the full yard and you'll definitely have enough. Yeah. Full yard can do queen size,
right?
If not king. I'm not sure. A full yard is a lot.
Yeah, a lot of our patterns have like a 5/8.
Yeah, half yard or 5/8 is pretty common for for throw sizes. So it just depends on exactly how big the throw is, because that could.
Yeah, and if you're not sure, Google binding calculator. All you have to do is put in the measurements of your quilt, and the calculators will spit out how much you need if you're doing a 2.5-inch binding.
Yes.
The other thing I thought about, how I like to do a 2 3/8 binding sometimes?
Yes.
Because I'm not a very neat 1/4 inch.
I thought you did 2 1/4.
2 1/4? No, 2 3/8.
2 3/8? Okay.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, you don't have to cut your binding at 2.5. 2.5 is just the industry standard. And if you're doing traditional binding where you sew with a machine to the front, fold it to the back, and then hand stitch on the back, in general, the back will be wider than the front. The front will be a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch, because you're using your 1/4 inch foot to stick it down there. But then when you fold it to the back, you have a little bit more than that showing. It'll be like closer to a 1/2 inch, but not quite. If you are doing machine bound binding on both sides and you are not very careful with your 1/4 inch seam allowance like I am, the wider bit goes to the front and that might bother you. So my solution to this, because I don't like to go slower, is I just cut my binding a little bit smaller. I cut my binding to 2 3/8. And then when I fold it over, I don't have that extra width on the front, which is where I don't want that extra width.
That's interesting, because I also don't like having that extra, and I machine bind everything.
Right.
I use a slightly bigger than 1/4 inch seam allowance.
Right.
And then it works out to be about even on both sides.
It's kind of the same idea, except that to do that, I would have to pay more attention and slow down.
Yeah.
Which you're good at, and I am not good at.
Right.
Yeah. So when I was looking at these, I was thinking to myself, well, if I wanted to cut it at 2 3/8, it still would be fine, right? Because there is that seam allowance where it's not printed at the edge. So
right. Yep.
I'm really excited about these. I think I'm going to use them a lot.
I think so. I think we're all going to be using these. It's like, why would you use something else if you can use one of these?
Yeah, if you can make your binding that little bit extra, right?
Yeah.
And especially the blue one, you could then like stitch on top of the design, or I don't know, like add.
Anybody that came late, we'll just show that one again. Check out those little X's. They come out so good. And then on the other side, the dashes. I love the dashes. And these little guys.
Made you bigger again.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we wanted to tell you about today is our newest fabric to arrive, although we actually got like 10 boxes of fabric
Oh
yesterday,
my
so
God.
now it's not the newest anymore.
I have so much fabric here. There's boxes everywhere. The delivery people come in and they're just like, where am I going to put these? You've already got a ton of boxes here.
Yeah. The space that we're working out of, because we closed our retail store in New York. Andrea works out of the new space for the online work version of our business, but that space didn't used to be a retail store with stuff, right? Like with shipments going out the door,
Right.
with the inventory coming in. So the poor UPS dude is
Oh, I
like,
know. And
what
FedEx.
is this?
Yeah, the UPS guy was not happy yesterday when
No.
he delivered 16 boxes in like
It
icy
was
weather.
16.
16
Ooh,
heavy, big, heavy boxes. Luckily, the last big, heavy shipment we got was FedEx. So at least the same
at
guy
least
didn't
you
have to
didn't
do
do a
both.
week. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm getting pretty friendly with our FedEx and UPS and
It's important to be
mail
friends with
carriers.
delivery dudes. It's very important.
Yes.
And if you're all wondering what's in the 20 something boxes of fabric that we just got,
You have to wait and see.
yeah, we're definitely going to do another live to
Yes.
tell you what is
Once
in
I can actually get them out of the boxes
yeah.
and get them online. So,
The shipment from last week we did put on the shelves already, and
and it is
so,
in the computer.
it's so pretty.
Yes, and Julep came in. How did
Sandra,
Sandra know that?
because she pre-ordered. You must have
Oh,
gotten.
that's right, because I mailed it already. Okay.
Yep. So Sandra, who's one of our regular customers, that she just commented that she noticed Julep came in. So
Yes.
Julep is the Kona color of the year for 2024. And
It's very
we
pretty.
thought it was coming in December and then it didn't come. But today it did come and Andrea's shipping it already.
Just
So
like
that's
everything.
how Sandra knew that came.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Everything has come late. So it figures that what was supposed to come in December is coming now. But it's here and it's really pretty. So
Yeah, you said it looks kind of like glacier but darker, right? Oh, maybe we should
yeah,
do a live for it.
sure, we can do that.
Yeah.
So maybe next week we'll show you guys Julep.
Yes, I think that's a good plan. Ooh, maybe I can make something in it. Because
Well, I didn't get it in your shipment before it went out.
I forgot. So. Yeah. All right. So now that we're rambling, I think we covered everything we were going to cover. If you have questions that you think of later, you can always email us. It's info@gothamquilts.com. And if you scan the QR code, you can see all the fabrics on our website. And actually, then you can see anything on our website. Andrew, did we have any updates that we had to give to anybody?
I don't think so. We've got almost every lovely day has gone out as
Stash
of today.
Script, right?
Yeah, so those all went out today. All of the Stash Society stuff is all out now. So I think I'm finally caught up on getting stuff shipped out, and now we can just concentrate on new fun stuff.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for joining us for Tuesdays in the Shop. We will be back next week with something fun, I promise. And have a good night. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Bye.